Buddhism, as pointed out by Professor Lewis Lancaster in his 2008 Berkeley lecture, is perhaps the first religion to transcend or go beyond its geographic, cultural, and linguistic boundaries of the origin in the Ganges Basin to spread far and wide because of its, among other things, its portable sanctity. Of course, nowadays, Buddhism is widespread everywhere. It's not only that, but certain practices were taken from Buddhism and now is widely practiced, like Vipassana meditation. So Vipassana is not a school of Buddhism, but it's a practice within Buddhism, has spread widely around the culture. From Buddhist hermeneutics, such as that of Donald Lopez, we can glean that the Buddhist texts, the sutras which we study nowadays, were written long after the Buddha's time. It is believed that they were passed on orally until they were written. And moreover, the biggest canon, the Mahayana canon, the Mahayana text, continue to be written for a millennia. They keep on adding sutras and interpretations of the teachings, regardless of the fact that they were written long after the Buddha. All that body of work is taken to be Buddha Vakana, the word of the Buddha. The Buddhist teaching spread through different cultures, and as it spread, it incorporated some of the local culture and traditions, and even the language, because they had to be translated. So there's the translation from oral to written, and also the written texts were translated from, for example, from Pali or from Prakrit to Chinese to Tibetan, Tibetan to Chinese, Chinese to Japanese. So there's layers of translation. A key challenge for our time in the year 2021 would be, how are we then to carry out this tradition of the teachings, in a way remaining true to the tradition, but also evolving to our times now in the way that the teachings evolved into different schools. As the teachings spread, they get reinterpreted by each culture that embraced the teaching. How are we to embrace and evolve the teaching in a way that doesn't veer too much away from the intent or from the intention of the Buddha? A very recent critique of Buddhism along the lines of what I've been talking about so far is embedded inside the last of their ongoing discussion between Jim Roth and John Vervaeke. John Vervaeke became well known for his YouTube series on awakening from the meaning crisis. John is an associate professor in University of Toronto, and in addition to his main field of cognitive science, he also teaches a course in Buddhism, psychology, and mental health program. Jim first says that one of my favorite examples is, if you look at the original Buddhism, the Buddhism of Gautama, especially the writings in the Pali Canon, the original language that he spoke, he specifically disavows metaphysical speculation, warns his followers not to engage in it, and as soon as he's dead, they start inventing stuff like devas and celestial spheres and loading karma way beyond the very subtle accounting system that he had in mind. And it's now full of the usual metaphysical claptrap other religions. It seems to be something that humans just want to do, and maybe part of our evolution is how do we get past that stage of falling into the trap of not distinguishing between culturally useful versus metaphysically true? And then later on, John says that regarding the Buddhist notion of enlightenment, he says that what we've typically done, and you can understand why people have done this, is we've taken this self-description of people who we believe are justified, and we can get into the problems around that. But nevertheless, we've come to believe are justified and claiming to be enlightened. And then we've tried to say, this is what enlightenment is, given that. This has led to perplexing complexity and mystique around enlightenment. It leads to the weird thing that if you look at the Buddha's time, hundreds and thousands of people are achieving enlightenment on a fairly regular basis. And if you ask a Buddhist now, how many people in the world are enlightened today, you'll frequently get an answer, well, probably no one. And it's like, really? Then this points to something has gone wrong. Like there's been monkeying with the plumbing in such a way to lead to that unacceptable result, I would think. Why are you Buddhist? To achieve enlightenment. How many people have achieved enlightenment? No one does. Well, really? That seems problematic. So they bring up a good point here. Like ever since I started my formal study of Buddhism, I've always looked at it as a soteriological path. It's a path towards enlightenment. And as we read the sutras or we read commentaries, we know of a lot of people who have achieved enlightenment in the past. But if the path is a good path, then why is no one claiming to be enlightened in the present? So there's something here. And John Vervaeke is working with collaborators to create what he calls a religion, that is not a religion. His main thesis is that we need religion, but the religions of the past don't work anymore. We need to take, on John Vervaeke's view, we need to take what's useful in religion and bring it into fruition now, so that there's a definite, with science, it's a path people, it's an ecology. He terms it as an ecology of practices that people can do that can lead to enlightenment here in this lifetime, in one's lifetime, without the mystique.
One could engage in this project of creating a religion that's not a religion. Or another way could be what John McCransky called a critical constructive reflection, where what's being learned in academia outside of Buddhism can inform the current Buddhist understanding and practice. And on the other side, where Buddhist understanding and practice can help inform and understand current social problems. Kransky says the question would be, how might academic knowledge inform contemporary Buddhist understanding and practice? And in turn, how might Buddhist understanding and practice help address current social needs and provide new insights into current issues? He also referred to Russell McCutcheon's concept of an outsider and an insider. Then an outsider's critique of Buddhism. An outsider is someone who is not practicing the religion, who is making a critique of the religion, whereas an insider is one who practices the religion. And in McCransky's article, he's saying, what if one is both an outsider when they're wearing their academic hat and having critical reflection on current Buddhist understanding and practice, and that same person can then is also a practitioner of the religion, so they can wear their practitioner's hat to have a constructive reflection on current practice and understanding. We consider that the critiques given by Jim Roth and John Vervaeke would fall under the outsider category in the McCutcheon typology. Perhaps there's an additional category in addition to the insider, outsider of McCutcheon and the insider/outsider of McCransky. Perhaps there's another category for people like Evan Thompson, who's not really an outsider to Buddhism, but who themselves, they don't consider themselves as a practitioner, as an insider. Instead, what Evan Thompson calls himself is a good friend of Buddhism. Evan Thompson is professor of philosophy at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver and an associate member of the Department of Asian Studies and the Department of Psychology in the Cognitive Science group. And as we can see from his Amazon page, he's written and co-written a few books, but what I'm gonna focus on today is on his book entitled Why I Am Not a Buddhist. Thompson says he's not a Buddhist, rather he considers himself to be a philosopher who believes in cosmopolitanism and also values Buddhism. He says, Buddhism is one of humanity's greatest religious and intellectual traditions. It is and deserves to be a participant in the secular and liberal democratic societies in our modern world. It is and deserves to be a contributor to a cosmopolitan community, one in which people participate in relationships
of mutual respect and cooperation, despite their differing beliefs. What I'm getting from what Evan is saying here, the world right now in the 21st century is largely secular, and a lot of us in the world value liberal democracies and also secularism, or the separation of church and state. But to him, Buddhism has a place in this. He considers cosmopolitanism as every one of us people have different beliefs, but we're still relating to each other and we have mutual respect with each other, even though we have different beliefs. That's what I'm saying. Is it's not like we're trying to find a religion, or a religion that's not a religion, as a one ring to rule them all, but rather it's lots of rings together talking and talking to each other. And by the relationship of these different rings, it becomes a richer throughout its history, especially in South and East Asia. Now, Buddhism also enriches the modern world. In North America, Asian immigrants and European and American converts have created new kinds of Buddhist communities, rituals, and artworks. Buddhism's influence on the popular culture is widespread. Buddhism continues to be one of our most vibrant traditions. So this echoes what I've said at the start of this talk, that Buddhism has spread from its root in the Ganges throughout Asia and throughout time to our present time. And if I may add to that, for example, Buddhism enabled this dialogue between the older empires of South Asia in the Indian subcontinent with the Han Chinese Empire in the east, towards the east in China. Without Buddhism, perhaps there would have not been a way for these two empires to have a dialogue with each other. And they did it via the Silk Route in Central Asia. And in doing this, there's a lot of enrichment that happens in terms of art, where Buddhist sutras and the way art is made, they kind of co-affect each other and condition each other. And for example, as well, in terms of technology, the printing of the canon, like the vastness of the Mahayana canon, the printing of that using movable blocks, movable type, that was a massive achievement, right? A big achievement back in those days. And perhaps without Buddhism, maybe people would not have endeavored to do that. And they also did that. They also did the same thing in Korea. And from Korea, and Japan recently did their own reprinting of the canon. And now, of course, the canon is being, so there was a moment where in Korea, they had to put the canon into electronic form in CD-ROMs. And then in Japan and also with NTI, we're putting the canon and other tools to help us translate the canon on the internet. So there is this, Buddhism has been enriching the host cultures that host the religion. Nevertheless, the dominant strand of modern Buddhism, known as Buddhist modernism, is full of confused ideas. They coalesce around what I call Buddhist exceptionalism. Buddhist exceptionalism is the belief that Buddhism is superior to other religions in being inherently rational and empirical, or that Buddhism isn't really a religion, but rather is a kind of mind science, therapy, philosophy, or way of life based on meditation. These beliefs, as well as the assumptions about religion and science on which they rest, are mistaken. They need to be discarded if Buddhism is to take its rightful place as a valuable contributor to a modern cosmopolitan community. Cosmopolitanism, the idea that all human beings belong to one community that can and should encompass different ways of life, provides a better framework for appreciating Buddhism and for understanding religion and science than Buddhist modernism. Evan Thompson is resisting this tendency to consider Buddhism as somehow superior to other religions because it is more rational or scientific. He points out that there are traditions or certain strands of Christianity, such as those of Augustine, who are also deep in philosophy, so as other branches of Hinduism, and Islam. He also resists this, what he calls the modern Buddhist modernist move of saying that our interpretation is the authentic, is the real intention of the Buddha. It's the real thing. It's the more authentic thing. It's a bit like, it's comparable to how some Christian fundamentalists say that their interpretation is the true interpretation. It's a bit similar to what Jim is saying, that to him, that the Pali Canon resists all metaphysical notions. But if you look at the canon, as Evan Thompson points out, there are metaphysical, there are things there that are not just what we call non-metaphysical things. So there are deities and stuff there, and there's some beliefs there that are not what Jin thinks it is. Buddhism is complex. There's several, even from the start, there are several interpretations, and it's a rich dialogue. I consider him not to be an outsider as such. Is from an early young age, he was exposed to Buddhism. His parents ran commune for academics, Lindisfarne, and he talks in the book about coming home from a holiday one time. When they returned, the whole place was being run by Zen monks, and the kids didn't like that because it was more serious than before. Later on, he met Robert Thurman, who was an interpreter to a Tibetan Lama. And later on, when he went to uni, Evan studied under him. So it was Thurman who advised him before. Thompson was, according to him, interested in Taoism, modern Taoism. But he said, if you really love philosophy, then you should go to Buddhism, because there's quite deep philosophy there. So he did that. In fact, his first published paper was on Heidegger and Nishitani. He also met through Lindisfarne Francisco Varela, well-known biologist and psychologist and cognitive scientist, also met the Dalai Lama, and together it led to this Mind and Life Institute, where there's a dialogue. There's to be a purported dialogue between Buddhism and the scientific community. When Francisco Varela passed away, Evan Thompson kind of got involved in the running of this institute, and that's where I think that's where he formed his view of Buddhist exceptionalism, where it seems to be that the scientists and the Buddhists there were self-praising each other, so to speak. They weren't critical of each other at all, and he says that even critics were kind of silent sometimes. And for example, he talks about how there are studies where they're studying Buddhist monks who are in meditation, and they're looking at the mapping of the brain, of neural correlates, and they're saying that, oh, Buddhist meditation changes your mind. But Thompson points out, from the scientific point of view, anything we do, as in anything, has an effect on the mind. So you cannot reduce that. And moreover, he gives this example of Yo-Yo Ma, the great cellist. Of course, if we scan Yo-Yo-Ma's brain, the patterns we will see there will be different from someone who is less good at the cello, or even who has no experience of playing the cello. That's true. That's fine. But just looking at the brain scans won't explain to us, or won't let us know why Bach is considered to be it's good music. For that, we need to understand music history. We need to understand who Bach is and what is that tradition. In his current field of cognitive science, he's saying they're coming to a view that cognition is not just in the brain, it's embodied. It's the whole body. In addition to that, it's embedded. So the body is embedded in a world. It's embedded in all the history, psychology. In a way, it reiterates pratikya samutpada, dependent co-arising. So everything is conditioned, and everything affects everyone, everything else, and it's all about relationality. It doesn't serve us if we take away the normative aspect and the ethical aspect of Buddhism and just get the mindfulness, almost pseudoscientific aspects of it. Because it is, for example, he also looks at even the concept of liberation or enlightenment. It's not what some people think, that, oh, we're just revealing the natural state of humanity. Even he himself, when he said when he went to this Vipassana retreat with the scientists under the Mind and Life Institute, they were all telling them that where you are just, when you do this, you're just coming into the what is the natural or the real state of humanity. But then they were all silent, but at night they will have dharma talks. But the whole like the way, there's a way that there's a normative aspect of the experience. This is what, in a way, they're laying out the rails on how the experience can be experienced. When you have sharing, he said, when you have sharing, things like meditation is beneficial, but things like meditation can be harmful. It's not entertaining at all. So he's saying we shouldn't do that exceptionalism. It's leading us astray. And the same way, using Buddhism to embellish science is not. It's not. They're quite different in the sense that how art is different from science. We don't use science to justify what is beautiful or what we consider art. They're different fields. They interplay with each other, because, like, for example, in painting, you need science to create the pigments and the science of light. But what is a good painting? You can't just explain it from the spectrum, the light spectrum. In the end, what I have come to after this journey is that, yes, Buddhism has a place in this world. To have the tradition as I see it affect me, and I find meaning from it. In the same way, like in the background, I drew this copying a tanka, and it's not a perfect copy because I interpret it from how I see it, and it was colored, and this is in pencil. But in the process of embodied drawing of this image and in my meditation on this image, I find meaning in it, and I can share it with other people. Other people can have their own interpretation, and it's okay. That grows. I think it's the best we could do, is to have different points of view, being respectful and interdialoguing, which also Thompson refers back to way back when Buddhism started. It has this in relationship with Hinduism, Jainism, and later on Islam in that part of the world, which he calls the Sanskrit cosmopolis. They helped each other, enriched each other, in the same way that in China you have Taoism, Confucianism, and then later on Buddhism. They interpret, penetrated each other, enrich each other. So that is the way forward. And that is very congruent with our study of humanistic Buddhism.